Let's bring back senior investigative reporter Aaron Katersky, joining us on the phone from Ukraine, along with White House correspondent Mary Alice Parks from D.C. with more on this. Aaron, before we get to the U.S. response, I understand Ukrainian officials are saying military aircraft carrying 14 people crashed in the Kyiv region on Thursday, killing at least 5 people. So what's the latest? What do we know about that?
Yeah, and these are just the earliest casualties, Diane. The crash of a Ukrainian military plane. There have been other casualties sustained by the Ukrainian military elsewhere in the country in the face of an aerial bombardment and troop movements by Russia. There are reports that Russian troops have been able to seize at least one airfield near the capital of Kyiv, and other airfields have been within sights of Russian missiles. Officially, the Russian Defense Ministry said it is only targeting military sites and has no intention of targeting civilians. But that is scant comfort to people here who have jammed the roads out of Kyiv to try and move to safer ground, who are thinking about leaving the country entirely if that's possible for them, and who are now stocking up on their prescriptions at pharmacies and cash at banks. We've seen long lines at both here in Lviv on what is otherwise a clear blue sky sunny day, just a very, very odd kind of backdrop for the kind of invasion that's now underway here.
And Mary Alice, President Biden is expected to address the nation later today. What do you expect to hear from him?
Yeah, the White House saying that he's going to explain further sanctions that the U.S. is ready to levy on Russia in coordination with allies. We know this morning he's meeting with his G7 counterparts. He's been huddled behind closed doors and in the Situation Room with senior members of his national security team as well. They're trying to figure out how the West will respond. You know, for weeks we've been hearing the president describe pending sanctions as devastating, overwhelming, that they are hoping that sanctions that they are threatening will have an economic and political consequences for Russia. But obviously the threat of these sanctions, the use of these sanctions as a deterrent so far has just not worked. So right now the White House under a lot of pressure to show that it still has tools in its toolbox, something up the White House's sleeve, because they have been saying that they are ready to respond. And now this is the moment for it.
Aaron, what are you hearing from Ukrainians there in Lviv? How are they reacting to this attack?
Well, I think they're just as, in awe of what they're seeing unfold. They certainly had seen the reports from the U.S. and its allies about what was possible here, but now that it's happening, it's caused, as I say, people to go find money, find medicine, and prepare for some potentially dark days. But I wouldn't say there's an outward sign of panic. Some people are still going to work, or they're going to the grocery store, and but it's not like buying out in advance of a hurricane or something. It seems more casual than that, but not to say that people are blind to it, because they've certainly heard the imposition of martial law from President Zelensky. They've heard the call to take up arms and join the military in fighting the Russians. They just don't know what that's going to look like yet, because not everything is shock and awe, and sometimes it could be some aerial bombardment. It could be troop movements. The Russian forces have attacked from land, sea, and air, but then there's a period of quiet. And look, this is only 12 hours old, and no one here knows what's ahead.
And back here in Washington, or in Washington, D.C., at least, the crisis has exposed some divisions within both political parties. Mary Alice, can you talk a little bit about that and the reaction from lawmakers here in the U.S.?
Yeah, well, there's been a push from both Democrats and Republicans for the White House to do more. Obviously, no one wants to see images like this. Everyone is on edge. There had been a big discussion the last few weeks about whether the president should be rolling out sanctions ahead of time. We heard the White House push back, say that they still believed that sanctions were better as a threat, as a possible deterrent. Obviously, that's going to be a big sort of subject of debate here in Washington now that it seems that failed. And obviously, a lot of concern that diplomacy has failed here. We've heard the White House say that they never wanted to close the door on diplomacy. Even as late as this last week, there was conversations of Secretary of State Blinken potentially meeting with his Russian counterpart. Of course, that meeting was called off, but there's going to be a lot of questions from Capitol Hill about whether Washington sort of missed the signs here, whether they were optimistic about whether the White House, I should say, missed signs here or was too optimistic about a potential path for diplomacy.
And Mary Alice, what does that do, given the track record with what happened in Afghanistan and the thought that the government was too optimistic in how they looked at that conflict?
Well, I do think one thing that's very different here is that the White House has been incredibly forthcoming with intelligence. So even though they, on the one hand, were trying to pursue a lot of diplomatic options, saying that they did not want to close those doors, they were also putting out some of these possible dire predictions.
All right, Mary Alice Parks in D.C., Aaron Katursky for us on the phone from Ukraine. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.